Hey humans! Welcome back to my third tutorial. Fun fact. I believe that aliens do not exist. We would by now have spotted them. Or they would have paid us a visit already. Back to the main business. Let's see what we are going to create today. Jump into After Effects. Create a new composition. You can choose any settings that you like. For purposes of this tutorial I'm sticking with these. Now, let's go into the cool stuff. Select the pen tool. We'll require only the stroke for this. Set the fill to none. For the stroke set it to a solid color. Set the stroke size to around 320 pixels. Now for the color, I'm using this lime green color. You are free to use any color of your choosing. Let's create a line. But before this, I'm going to turn on the title action safe. Then with the Shift key pressed down on the keyboard, click to draw a line. Click on opposite ends. This will create a straight line. Then turn off the title action safe. We don't need it anymore. Now, select the shape layer. Then add a trim paths to this. You could also use a rectangular shape for this. But you can't add a trim paths to it. Although you can achieve a similar effect using radial wipe. It is easier this way. Now inside the trim paths create a keyframe on the start value and set it to 0. Then go to the 1 second mark and set it 100. At the 15 seconds mark create a keyframe for the end and set it 0. Go at the 2 seconds mark and set it to 100%. Our effect is coming to life. Next we need to make duplicates. To do this select this layer. Press Ctrl+D to duplicate it. Now select this duplicate layer and press U to view keyframes. Then select these keyframes and move them a few frames forward. Let's change this shape's color to white so that we can view it properly. To do this, head over to the Effects and Presets tab. Look for the fill effect and apply it to this layer. Now change its fill color to white. Let's run preview this. Now select these keyframes. Right-click and choose Keyframe Assistant. Ease them. Go to Graph Editor and adjust the keyframes as follows. Then preview this. This does not look as good. To fix this select these keyframes and let's adjust the graphs. You can ease the keyframes in the graphs section. Simply click on this. Now adjust these graph handles to create a peak at the center. This looks good for now. We shall fix it later. But first drag this keyframe backwards in time. Next we need another duplicate. Simply select this top shape layer and duplicate it. Press U to view keyframes. Next, select these keyframes and delete them. Now move the timeline marker to the 1 minute mark. Create a keyframe on the start property. Oops. My bad. We only need keyframes for the start. I'll delete this keyframe for the end property. Go to the 2 seconds mark and set the start value to 100%. Perfect. Then go back to the 1 minute and 15 frames mark and set a keyframe for the end property. Now go forward in time to the 2 minutes and 15 frames mark and set the end property value to 71%. Now let's perfect this animation. Select these other two shape layers and press U to view their keyframes. This process will involve tweaking the graphs and timing of the keyframes to achieve the required animation. You can follow along. I'll change the fill effect for this top layer to lime green. This is better now. Let's add some text to it. With nothing selected on the timeline, create a new text layer. Let me type out the text. I'll change this font to Geomancy. You can find a link to this font in the description below. The text looks small. Let's increase the font size. Then adjust this text's position. Font size and font type will depend on your preference. Perfect. Then position the text layer above the shape layer 1. Next we'll require the track matte tab. If for some reason you don't have this tab, click on this button to toggle between. On the shape layer, set the track matte to alpha inverted matte. Perfect. Create another text for the shape layer 3. Repeat the same process for this text. Now let's create these 3 texts that appear here. I'll be using the Gotham family of fonts for this. As always, I have linked this font in the video description below. Let us animate the texts. Select the 3 text layers. Press P to open position. Go to around 2 seconds and 5 frames. Click on the stopwatch icon to create keyframes for the text layers. Go back in time and position the text layers as follows. Next we need to create a mask. With nothing selected on the timeline, select the rectangular tool. Make sure that the stroke is set to none and fill to a solid color. Create the mask as follows. Make sure that your mask is large enough. Perfect. Now select the shape layer. Duplicate it. Place this on top of the 3 text layers. We are going to use this shape layers to mask out the text. On the text layers, change the track matte to alpha inverted matte. Let's add some easing to the text keyframes. Select these 3 text layers and open up their keyframes by pressing U on the keyboard. Let me adjust my workspace. Now select these keyframes. Right-click and choose Keyframe Assistant. Then ease these keyframes. Open Graph Editor and adjust the graph as follows. As you can see, our text is visible on the layers. But we want it to be behind the green box. Let's fix this. Select the 3 text layers together with their masks. Right-click and pre-compose them. Rename this to text. Also make sure the Move All Attributes is selected. Perfect. Now select this text composition and place it above the shape layer 1. The RoboFX text is visible. Just go into the text composition and displace the text layers as follows, so that they appear after these rectangles have finished animating. Adjust the keyframes also. Let's add some character to the text animation. Go into the text composition and then displace the keyframes by a few frames. As you can see, next is not visible. Just place our text layer above it in the timeline. Cool. Next we'll need to add icon logo to this. I'm using the Adobe Illustrator and After Effects logos. You can find these on Google search. Import the logos into the project. Select the After Effects logo and drag it into the timeline. Then press S to open Scale. Scale this logo to your preference. Just make sure that it fits into this square. Position this logo as follows. You may need to scale it a little bit. Select this logo and pre-compose. I'm renaming it to A logo. Ensure the Move All Attributes is selected. Let's make this logo cool. Head over to the Effects and Controls tab. Then look for the drop shadow effect. Apply this to the logo composition. Increase the softness amount to around 200. I'm also increasing the opacity. Now select this logo comp. Then select the anchor point tool. Grab this anchor point and position it here. Perfect. Go to around 2 seconds. Select this logo comp layer and press S to open scale. Create a keyframe and set the value to 0. Then go forward in time to around 2 seconds and 20 frames and set the value to 100%. Good. Now select the keyframes and easy ease them. You can press F9 to easy ease them. Then open Graph Editor and adjust the graph handles as follows. Let's make this better. Again head over to the Effects and Presets tab. Then look for the tint effect. Apply this to the logo comp. Then map black to this lime green color. Just select this eyedropper tool and click on the color. You can choose any color that you want. Next we need to do the same for the Illustrator logo. But this time place the anchor point to the bottom right corner of the lime green square. Also displace its scale keyframes so that it animates after the After Effects logo. I'm changing the tint colors for both logo layers. If you find that there's some glow effect, simply place the tint effect above the drop shadow effect in the Effects Controls tab. Let's add some drop shadow to the rectangles. Go into the Effects and Presets tab and look for this effect. Apply it to the 3 rectangles. Perfect. Now increase the softness amount for this effect in the Controls tab. I don't like the font for this text. Let's change it. Select the text layer. Then, go to the Characters tab. I'm changing this to Germanist, regular italic font. For those who might be interested in this font, I'll include a link to it in the video description below. I'm also changing the font for this other text layer. Now go to around 7 seconds. Select the text comp and duplicate it. With the duplicate selected, click on Layer then Time Reverse Layer. Then move the time marker to around 6 seconds and 15 frames. Select the duplicate layer and press Alt and left bracket to trim the comp. Also select this lower text comp and press Alt and right bracket to trim it to this point. Select this top text comp and move it a little bit to the left. Now select these two logo compositions. Then press P to open position. Click on the stopwatch icon to add keyframes at the 7 seconds mark. Move forward in time to the 8 seconds mark and move these logos to the right. Perfect. Now, select these two logo comps again and press T to open opacity. Click on the stopwatch to add keyframes at the 7 seconds mark. Go forward in time, then set the opacity to 0%. Select these two logo comps and press U to view all keyframes. Select the keyframe and ease them. Open Graph Editor and adjust the graphs as follows. Now select the shape layer 3. Press U to open keyframes. Then add a keyframe on the end property. Go forward in time for about 1 second and set this value to 0. Then at around the 8 seconds mark create a keyframe on the start property. Move forward in time for about 1 second and set this value to 0. Select this shape layer 2. Press U to view keyframes. Before I forget, please subscribe to my channel. Let me adjust my workspace. Now at about 8 seconds create a keyframe on the start property. Go forward in time to about 9 seconds and 5 frames and set the start value to 0. Then at about 8 seconds 15 frames. Create a keyframe for the end. Move forward about 1 second and set the end value to 0. This doesn't look good. Let's tweak this a little bit. Select this end keyframe and move it forward. Then select these last keyframes and move them closer. Better. Now select the shape layer 1. Press U to view its keyframes. Then adjust its end and start keyframes. This tutorial is getting long. Let me speed it up. Let's tweak these keyframes a little bit to get the effect I'm going for. There's no perfect way to do this. Just adjust them until you feel you are satisfied with the animation. It looks better now. Let's fix this text problem. We don't need it when these shapes are animating out. Select both New and Start text layers. Then move this playhead to around 7 seconds. Press Alt and right bracket to trim these compositions. Perfect. Our animation is almost complete. But before we add a background to this, let's tweak keyframes to make the animation good. Now go into the text comp. Turn on motion blur for the text layers. If you don't see the switches tab, click on this button to toggle between. Don't forget to turn on this big motion blur icon. Now go back into the main composition and turn on motion blur for the text comps. This is better. Let's add a background to this. Select all these layers, right-click and pre-compose. I am naming them to main. As always, make sure the Move All attributes is selected. Then import an image or video into the projects folder. Then drag it and place it below the main composition. Run preview this. Our animation is complete. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next week.